A little while ago we mentioned the Horwa Imperium and the border that surrounds it. The reason why it's such a crap assignment is because, frankly, the Horwa aren't coming out, and no one else is going to be dumb enough to go in. Nearly every race in the area has had an encounter with the Horwa. Mankind's first encounter was nearly a century ago, and it was a rather telling lesson. A lot of military types refer to it as the AJAX incident. But when the space clowns first appeared nearly a century ago and began their march across the Outer Rim, it caused a major panic. They had won battle after battle across the entire region, sending shockwaves of chaos and panic all the way up to the Imperial Senate itself. Despite the heated warnings of the Rambonians, the Centaurians, and the Zeta Reticulans, one Earth senator proposed that they send an envoy to open diplomatic ties with the Horwa in hopes of making an alliance against the space clowns. It was decided that they would send the AJAX, a Baker-class cruiser, into Horwa space, broadcasting a message of peace on all frequencies. Only one officer in the Imperial Navy volunteered to accept the command chair, despite all the possible rewards. That officer was a Marine, Lieutenant Colonel Emerson Blake. Blake was a seasoned, competent officer and highly decorated. He was the only officer in the military at that time to have been awarded the Imperial Medal of Honor 3 times. Once in the Earth Dragalore War, another in the Capella conflict, and the third for the Battle of Molokai. The AJAX was literally fresh out of the shipyard, had completed all her shakedown cruises with flying colors, and was the top of the line for its era. The ship left Elgar Station and engaged its war hyperdrive, bound for the Horwa Imperium. She had 432 crewmen on board. 14 hours, 37 minutes, and 27 seconds later, the vessel suddenly dropped out of hyperspace and appeared on the scopes of Dilgar's long-range sensor arrays for all of 20 seconds before it vanished. All attempts to contact the vessel were met with static. No one dared send a rescue team. 87 days later, a derelict was picked up on long-range sensors drifting in orbit around Olenarsis 4. It was the AJAX. Now keep in mind, this vessel had disappeared past the border of the outer boundary of the Empire, and had just now reappeared on the other side of the quadrant. The heavy cruiser ISS Bucephalus was the nearest Imperial vessel, and it intercepted the AJAX and began to scan it with every form of sensor known to mankind. The AJAX was undamaged, no sign of any form of incursion. All systems appeared to be in full working order. One life sign was detected. After receiving the go order from the High Command, boarding parties were dispatched to the AJAX, and they found nothing. All 432 crewmen were gone. It was as if literally they had stopped what they were doing at that moment in time, dropped whatever was in their hands, and popped out of existence. The remains of half-eaten meals were found in the galley. Showers had been left running. Tools were lying on the floor in the engine room, and medical instruments lay scattered about in the sickbay. Clipboards, laptops, and computer pads had been left lying around in the corridors. One of the squad leaders who knew their ancient lore stated, quote, "It's a bloody Mary Celeste," end quote. Maybe it would have been better that way. It wasn't until the lead team under Captain Helena Bush breached the bridge that the true horror of it all was revealed. Sitting in the captain's chair was the one life sign they had detected. It was Lieutenant Colonel Emerson Blake. His once red hair and well-trimmed beard had grown wildly and turned completely white. Emergency medical droids had been keeping him fed and hydrated and basically alive intravenously. Empty saline and nutrient bags were scattered about on the floor around him. He was sitting in his own filth and had been there for all of 87 days. His once powerful 44-year-old body was atrophied almost to the point of being unrecognizable. Blake seemed completely oblivious to their presence. His empty, hollow eyes just stared forward. On the view screen, a series of multiplex video streams were playing and repeating. The timestamps were all the same, a sequence from 87 days before. They were recordings from the security cameras, and what they showed shocked everyone into silence. All 432 crew members of the AJAX stopping what they were doing, dropping whatever was in their hands, and calmly walking down the corridors. Some were in uniform, others in pajamas. Some were completely naked and still wet from the showers. Captain Bush, who had faced down a xenomorph incursion on VL-624 without so much as a blink, had tears streaming from her eyes as she watched what happened on that screen. 87 days before, the crew of the Ajax had walked down the corridors and formed neat queues at their nearest airlocks. As calmly as if they were operating a vending machine, each one operated the inner airlock door, stepped in, closed the inner door. They then activated the outer airlock door and were sucked out into the black. The next would walk up, close the outer airlock door, open the inner door, and repeat the process. This happened across the ship until all of them were gone. And that was when the bridge door closed automatically, knocking everyone back into reality. Blake, who'd been just sitting there, slowly turned his head and shakily lifted his withered arm and pointed at the bridge door. Some variants of the story say it was written in blood. Others say that it was burned into the very doors itself. But either way, any version of this story that you hear, it was the same 4 words. You have been warned. The aftermath? Well, Captain Bush and whoever been on the bridge to the Ajax within the next month either resigned their commissions or deserted. Senator Ogla, who had proposed the mission, hung herself in her office a week after. Emerson Blake was then sent to a medical psychiatric facility near Gamma Theridon. He was in and out of comas for a few weeks, and even when he regained consciousness, he was always in a catatonic state. His physical health seemed to be improving, so he was moved to another facility on Earth so he could be closer to home. No one is sure just what happened, but the scuttlebutt was he received a visitor who violated protocol and forgot to check their sidearm at the front door. Blake was found dead with a particle beam pistol in his hand, written on a pad next to his bed were his final words that are still a mystery now as even they were then. In large capital letters he had printed neatly, I have seen the light, and it has blinded me with death. Oh, and maybe it should be no surprise that the last person who had signed out a visitor pass to visit Blake was Captain Helena Bush, Imperial Space Marines, retired.